Welcome to the finance meeting, April 2nd, 2019. Can we have approval of the agenda?
It's moved by Councillor Stacey White, seconded by Councillor Casey Owens. The Council approves the agenda for its finance meeting of April 2nd, 2019 as presented.
All in favor? Passed. Declaration of pecuniary interest? None seen. Petitions and delegations. Welcome up, guys.
Just by words of introduction, the Swastika sewage project has been ongoing since I think 2016. That's when I think funding was confirmed. LVO is with Stantec, and Stantec did the phase 1 work on the project and is about to begin with the phase 2. We invited him to council to give an update on the project, what some of the challenges may be, some of the mitigation efforts that can be put forward, and how to go forward from here. He's accompanied by Eric Nielsen of Aqua, as this is a project that currently has Aqua, the municipality, and Stantec working together.
Thank you. As Wolf mentioned, I'm Melvio Zaghi of Stantec and been involved in this project for about 2 years, a little bit more. My background goes back farther here. I was the lead engineer for the wastewater treatment plant several years ago. Today will be the 8th presentation that we've done, and we'll give you a status update of the next phase of work. And I'm going to walk you through, but I'm going to take a moment. I'll give you the agenda. 4 things we're going to come across today. I'll give you a project background, just an overview of this, the key issues, particularly cost and how we're going to deal with them, speak to the schedule, and then we'll open it up for questions, whatever questions you might have. Do you want to spend a moment? A safety moment. Something that hit our office last week. One of our senior designers had a heart attack. Just want to bring everybody up to speed on the issues of having an heart attack. Now, keep in mind, our staff are certified in first aid and CPR. We have to be recertified every 2 years. But what CPR and safety training does, or first aid training does, it strengthens you, trains you how to deal with somebody with a heart attack. But what happens when you have a heart attack? So our employee was out after work with a group of friends playing volleyball in an adult league, recreational league. He wasn't feeling well. He was in the dressing room and his arm was hurting. He didn't understand what that meant. He didn't think anything of it. The other people around him thought, okay, he's got an arm, he'll figure it out. They went into the gym and they were thinking, well, where's Simon at? His brother's thinking, okay, something's wrong with his arm. I'm gonna go look for him because that's unusual for him. Went looking for him, and Simon didn't think anything of it, didn't tell anybody, and he was gonna go home. Collapsed outside, alone. The friends went looking for him. He's on the ground, passed out, heart attack. So here are some of the key learnings that we found. First, you gotta learn first aid and CPR. It's critical because you can save a loved one, a friend, a co-worker. In this case, you had 2 small children. The AED, they're everywhere. There might be one here. I don't know if you have a defibrillator. Does everybody know where it's at? So in this particular case, one of the friends was a teacher in the school. He knew where to go get it. Got it very quickly. Know the warning signs. There's 5 of them. What I didn't know is one of them, number 4 on the screen, is arm pain. I didn't know a heart attack could be an arm pain. I just didn't know that. Now what we're learning is even though you're trained in this, you might not be feeling well. You got to tell somebody, because they're not going to figure out if you're not feeling well. You've got to tell somebody they're not feeling well. Flip side, if you see somebody not feeling well or you're not sure, you got to talk to them. Understand on the other side, they may not know what's happening to them. So now you're going to go out of your way to talk to them, know the warning signs. There's 5 of them on this list. And if you have any doubt, call 911. Case of Simon, the AED they shocked him a few times. 911 came, shocked him some more. In the ambulance, shocked him a few more times. In the hospital, shocked him a few more times. 20 times. And he's 47 years old. Now, who would have thought that? He lived. But it was touch and go the first night. So there's a lesson learned for everybody. Heart attacks, they happen. We have to talk. And if you feel unwell, reach out and touch somebody and tell somebody that. I'll leave it at that. Okay, why are we doing this project? Currently, the sanitary service cost for Swistica, it is high. When we look at this project, and we went through all the background and the work that was done, we're looking, we could save 11.9, let's call it $12 million in the long term if we do this project. If we do nothing and we keep Swistica wastewater pollution control plant the way it is, the 20-year cost is going to be $15.8 million. Let's say $16 million. Proposed right now, if we were to pump the Kirkland Lake and say the construction cost plus the 20-year life cycle cost, it's about $9.5 million. We're going to have a long-term savings of $11.9 million when you take into account that grant funding. The grant funding for this project is $8.2 million limit. The feds and the province put in they put in 1/3 each for 2/3, and they put in 5.6. The town share is 2.6. You put in 2.6, you have potential of saving up to $12 million. That's why we're doing this project. Now, what is this project? The proposed solution? We're going to go from left to right. Number one is going to be the Swistica Pollution Control Plant. Really, all the flow from Swistica, that's where it goes, and it gets treated, and it gets brought and discharged into the lake there. We're looking at decommissioning that plant. We're going to put a new local pumping station to pick up about those 30 or 40 homes in the immediate area, plus the campground. We're looking at the main Swistica pumping station. Want to reuse that. We're going to put another buried pipe that will allow the flow to be pumped all the way to Kirkland Lake. We looked at the potential of servicing those properties along 66 and 112, and I'm going to call it provisional right now, and I'll speak to that in a moment. Chappie Hughes pumping station, we're looking at upgrading that, and then from there we would pump all the way down Archer Drive to get the Kirkland Lake wastewater treatment plant, and there might be some operational adjustments at the sewage treatment plant, at the Kirkland Lake wastewater treatment plant for the additional flows. Now there is capacity, there is reserve capacity at the Kirkland Lake wastewater treatment plant, but there might be small adjustments, not with capital, but with just operations and that sort of thing. Now we look at the key issues of cost. The preliminary construction cost is tracking too high. We understand that. Cost prediction range now on the low end is between 7.1 and 15.6 million. It's an average of 10.2. Understand right now we've done very little technical work. We've gone through the planning stage of the class environmental assessment and enough technical work to do that. As we continue through the design, we're going to tighten up that cost, and we understand we got to be on the low end. Right now, designs may be 15% complete, and we knew there are risks to it, and we had to put cost contingencies to those risks. That's what's driving the cost up right now. As this design progresses from 30 to 100% completion, our cost accuracy will continually improve all the way to the end of getting to the tender price, which is the actual price. The key drivers that are driving up this cost, and these are the ones that we're going to be targeting. We have to target this to reduce the cost. Our target is to get to, the goal is get this project down to 8.2 million, which is the grant funding limit. Now, here's the big breakdown of costs. I don't want to get too caught up. This is a large spreadsheet, but here's the key drivers. The servicing of those properties along Highway 66 near 112, those were not in the original budget. We did send a survey out during the Class EA, and generally the interest that's been expressed back was low for connection. There's a lot of money associated with that connection. So that's one of the items that we're looking at. Can we defer that and not do it today? Upgrading Chappie Hughes pumping station was not part of the original scope. We looked at it because it was the right thing to do. There's major equipment in that pumping station that's getting near end of life, and it will have to be replaced. We can do that now under this job. At the same time, we can also accommodate those new flows that are coming from the Kirkland Lake Gold project. That speaks to number 3 is Kirkland Lake Gold servicing. It ties into Chappie Hughes. We are looking at upsizing of piping and equipment has driven up the cost. What we found in the work that we did in the Class EA, there is at spring thaw, in like this weekend, if we go into double digits and if it rains with all the snow, there is a lot of water that gets in, stormwater, meltwater that gets into that pumping station. We found some areas where the water's entering. We need to reduce that. But right now, at the preliminary level, it is causing the pumps and the pipes to get larger. In particular, that pipe that connects Wastika all the way into KL. It's roughly 7 kilometers long. If I have to upsize a pipe at $50 a meter and I got 7,000 meter, it's easy to get to an extra $1 million that way. So we need to think that through. Rock removal. We understand there's a lot of rock here, it's given. Now that we have a better understanding of the routing, and we have to be deep with this pipe if we do conventional. So we have to be down 10 feet or 3 meters below frost cover. There is a lot of rock removal. In the springtime, when we get the snow out of the way, we can do the geotechnical investigations to better understand where the rock is, the buried profile of the rock. So we can now swing this pipe right and left as we need to get away from most of the rock. We need to reduce the rock removal. Also, we're looking at, we spoke to Patterson Construction, and they've successfully installed insulated pipe. And that, if that allows us to go shallower, we don't have to remove much rock. We've got a lot of money on rock removal, so we need to be mindful of that. That's one of the things we're looking at as a low-hung apple to save money. We have 3 special crossings, and we have to put contingencies into this at this point. The railway is going to be a tough crossing. We need to talk to them to find out how we can do that better. The creek crossing, we either go under or we strap it to the bridge. And then we have that gas transmission main we got to get across. Those are 3 key crossings that we had to put a fair amount of money to. Lastly, inflation. That's something we need to investigate because the number is about, the grant funding number that went in is about 4 years old. By the time we get to tender, it's 5 years old. Construction costs have been increasing up in Northern Ontario at 2 to 3% per year, 15%. That in itself is $1 million number. So we need to explore with the grant funding people at the Fed and provincial level, how can we now go back to them and say, hey, we need some support here because of the inflationary number. Looking at these items, that's how we're going to reduce the cost of this job. So here's what we're proposing to do to keep this project cost on budget. In June, July, we're going to hold a workshop, and we want to look at all the project risks that are driving up the cost. We're going to hold this with ourselves. We'll bring our people in. We'll have the town and aqua operations staff. This will happen at about 30% design completion. That gives us some time to do more technical work, to get a better understanding of what's there, to put more information on the table so we can make the right decisions. The purpose of the workshop is going to be 3 things. We want to find out what are the cost risks, put some definition to them. We want to identify the opportunities to save costs, and then we're going to set clear targets to keep the project cost on budget. We could defer some work. If we have to keep it on budget, that's what we're going to do, but we'll come back to you. We're going to also hold milestone updates. So we'll make this decision in about 2 or 3 months, June, July, of here's how we're going to keep it on track. And then every month we're going to measure ourselves. Are we hitting these targets, yes or no? So by the time we get to tender, we have a good understanding that, we're targeting 8.2 on total costs. We need to keep to that all the way to that tender point. Suggestion here, what we can do is when we do this workshop, we come back here to the collective of elected officials and say, okay, here's our game plan. Here's what we identified as the big cost items and how we can reduce them. Here are our recommendations in combination with town staff and aqua operations staff. Come back to you and say, here's how we're recommending to keep this job on budget. And if we have to defer certain things, we'll make it very clear of this is what the original scope of the job was. We've added some things. We're suggesting we're going to defer some things, and here's what we need to do to keep it to 8.2 million. Schedule. We want to start the design in April. Once the snow melts, we can start the field work. That's geotechnical work, the geotechnical investigations to better understand the buried rock profile underneath the soil. June, July, we'll hold that workshop dealing with cost risk control. Hoping in the fall of 2019, to tender. If we can be one of the first ones under tender compared to your neighbors, we want to get the best pricing is when those contractors don't have a lot of work. So we want to be one of the first ones to get them to bid to us. Once they start filling up their plates, their numbers go up. If we got an $8.2 million number and we can get those tenders down by 10%, that's an $800,000 number. That's why we want to get out there early onto the street. We can award this, I would suggest we tender late fall. We can award it in winter 2020. We can start construction in spring 2020 after the melt. The construction substantial completion, that's a technical term. That's when essentially all the construction is complete and it's operational. That could be spring of 2021. And we have under the contract a 1-year warranty period. Any kind of glitches, the contractor is responsible for that. That will carry the contract completion all the way through to the spring of 2022. We're looking at about 3 years away. That was quick on my part. I'm sorry if I went too fast, but if questions, and I can go back on things if I went too quick on them.
Yeah, for the people that are on well and septic on 112 and 66, will they have an option, or everybody's gonna be hooked up?
There's two big alternatives. One we looked at was if we put in a local sewer, we have right now tentatively in the design, a local pumping station with a local sewer that pumps back into the pipe that we're putting in for Swastika. That local sewer pick everything up. But that sewer right now is going in at over $1,000 a meter. I've got probably $1 million, $2 million in sewer. It's a big number. What we could do is we can defer that sewer. We can put connection points in there to make it easier to connect into, and if when more grant money comes available in subsequent years, you can do that. If somebody comes in a pinch, it could be a residential property, it might be a commercial property. If they need a service, then what we're looking at is possibly like an E1 pump grinder unit. They would get a pumping system tagged onto their septic tank, and they could pressurize and pump right into our force main. It'd be just like a water service. You can go in, hot tap right into it. They would pay that cost. They would only pay it when they need it. But that option is there if you want to do that. So we're trying to make it flexible. So 3 things. We put the trunk sewer, we put that local sewer in now, pay the price. We defer it and wait for grant funding to help support that price. If they want to go on their own and they're in today or in the future, in the bind, then they'll buy an E1 grinder unit. It's probably like a 1-inch connection, and that would allow them to service right into the pipe that we're putting in.
Rick?
Yeah, you mentioned some things could be deferred. Okay, so obviously one thing that could be deferred is the sewage system for houses or businesses. What else could be deferred on this project?
If we had to, we could pump from the main Swastika pumping station directly down Archer Drive. We could bypass Chappie Hughes. There is a fair amount of money that we were looking at spending at Chappie Hughes, which my gut feel is it's the right thing to do because you need some refurbishment in that pumping station, but that is an option as an example. That's probably the next biggest one. If I had to defer it, there might be some upgrades in Swastika in the pumping station that we could defer. We might just come to maybe we just replace the pumps right now and not the piping in the major electrical, but I'd rather not do that because a lot of that equipment's getting old. And if it's on its last legs and I can replace it now at 2/3 funding, if something were to go in 2 or 3 or 4 years after construction, you're stuck $100
You mentioned insulated piping that you didn't have to bury as deep. It sounds really good in theory, but your costs insulating the insulated piping is definitely less than the cost of putting regular piping lower? Because obviously insulated piping is gonna cost you quite a bit more, I would think.
It comes, we spoke to Pedersen, we got some numbers from Pedersen, Carl. What we understand is the pipe costs more. The installation cost is cheaper, but the big difference here is rock removal. I'm looking at, let's say I do $1,000 a cubic meter for rock removal. I got a potential over $1 million of rock removal. If I can reduce that by, well, if I can eliminate it, but if I can reduce it by 75%, I can recoup 750,000. So we may not insulate the entire length of the 7 kilometers. We might just insulate those areas, and let's say for sake of argument, it's 30 or 50% of the length of those areas that we have rock issues. And maybe the rock, let's say in an area, the rock might be 5 feet below grade. We might strip right to that rock, put some bedding on top of the rock, then put insulated pipe, and then put the 4 or 5 feet of soil on top of it.
So, I mean, ideally, you'd want the line to run basically on the same level. Now, if you only do part of the line insulated, then your regular line's gonna be another 4 or 5 feet deeper, right?
Yes.
So you're gonna be going up and down, and is that gonna stress the pumps out, or we're gonna have to spend more on pumps to do that then?
No, it wouldn't affect your pumps, but like an example is right now, we come out of Swistica and we're going northbound. We're gonna be a little bit high. We're gonna go down to the creek and then we come back out of the creek. So we're gonna have to put air release chambers because air tends to collect in those. So we'll we'll compensate. It isn't so much, it doesn't really affect the pump really. The pump, it's inconsequential. The pipe can go left, right, up, or down, and it still works. It's collecting air. So we'll put air release chambers and that sort of thing. So if air does collect inside that pipe, we can release it, and that'll be an automated, mechanical automated fixture fitting.
So you don't need bigger pumps to push, I wish I wasn't at council, but I am, to push material uphill then?
We're
Is that
pushing-
what you're basically telling me?
No, but I'm pushing uphill anyways because really the top of the land
Okay,
is on
I-
Archer Drive.
Yeah, I understand.
I gotta
now.
get all the way up there
Yeah,
regardless.
Yeah, no, I
But
understand
in
now.
between, if I go up or down, I mean, the hill's up here, in between, if I go like this, it doesn't
Yeah.
matter. I gotta get up there.
Okay, thank you.
Pat?
Right across from, well, by the graveyard, so cutting across 112, it's all gonna be underground. Is that road gonna be shut down for,
No, what we're trying to do is we're trying to stay out of the pavement as much as possible because of the restoration costs of that pavement. The MTO yard there beside the creek, maybe it's not MTO, I believe it's MTO. That is actually the location that we had looked to put the local, the end of the sewer for the local sewer for those properties, and the pumping station to be located there. So
on the other side then?
on,
Yeah,
on the cemetery side, I
Yeah.
guess, if you would say that. And then we would route in that easement or right-of-way area, in that natural area there, we would want to go in there. Only, I want to stay off the road because it's too expensive to restore that road. If we can reduce it, not all the areas we can, but as much as we're going to, we're gonna have to do that.
Sounds like you have a lot of costs that can fluctuate. Just it makes me a little nervous when I hear that costs aren't fixed, and I know that eventually they will be. But it does give me a little bit of a queasy stomach when I hear it could be and maybe, and we can cut, but we may not, and all of a sudden a project goes from 8.2 to 16 or 17 million.
No, that ain't gonna happen. We're gonna come back to you in June, July, and here's our recommendation of, here's the plan. How do we keep it down to 8.2 million? And we're gonna show you all the risks. Here's some of the cost numbers that are gonna be deferred and why. And here's what we did with the mix to get us a solution that you need to service Wastika that's affordable, that's in your budget. And we'll come back to you with our recommendation collectively for you to make that, not decision, we'll tell you our recommendations. Yeah, and keep in mind here, as we get more and more into the design and we start developing the drawings, we can start taking quantity takeoffs, those numbers get tighter and tighter. But we're gonna know every milestone, you know, from 30 to 40 to 50% completion, our numbers get tighter, but we're gonna get focused in on 8.2. If we have an issue and we have some concern getting to tender, we may have some wiggle room in our budgets, and likely what we'll do is we'll get the contractor to give us, here's what we must have. And here's some things that we would like to have, and they might be provisional. And we may have 3 or 4 provisional items that we get bids on. And let's say the job were to come in for construction, for sake of argument, let's say we're targeting 7.2 on construction, roughly 7.2 million, because of the costs associated with that, non-construction costs. But let's say bids come in really sharp when we're 400,000 low. Well, if you leave 400,000 on the table, you don't save 400,000 because the province takes a third, the feds take a third, and out of 400,000, you might save 130,000. What we want to do is come back to the table to say, okay, here's our recommendation. The low bid was this number. You still have some wiggle room in here to get to your budget limit, and we have clear provisional numbers from the contractor, and we're recommending maybe we can do, you know, out of the 5 provisionals, number 1, number 3, and number 4, because you have that flexibility in your budget. I'm pretty comfortable here. We can deliver your job on budget, but we'll know that by the time we get to tender, we'll know if we're going to be on budget or not. And if it's too high, then you don't proceed.
Thank you. Oh, Patrick?
Question is actually for Wilf. How often have we ever gone back to the province and, you know, we got the grant approved based on our preliminary estimates, and we're low? Have they come good for the difference?
Myself, for my projects, I went once, and it was not a pleasant experience. The province, after a lot of work, did come in more. The feds at that point declined. That, however, is not the same kind of project. For the infrastructure projects, it usually depends on what level you're at and how advanced you are. If you were to go to them right now and say, oh, we think we might be under, you won't have a chance, because they're going to say, well, we just don't know at this point. But if you proceed as they're saying, where you have it planned out in stages, and you keep them advised, you stand a much better chance. Political environment is changing as well with Mr. Ford and Mr. Trudeau, so that always comes into play. If you are showing that you are doing your due diligence, that you have been tracking and have kept them aware of the situation, which means having a very good relationship with the funding organizations, having somebody who can put that in their words, you stand a far better chance than you would otherwise. I can't say that I can't put a percentage to that. Elvio, you've had more experience on that with other projects, if you wish to address.
We've successfully gone back on some projects. You just got to give good reason for it, and presuming they have money left in their pockets to do that. Now, going into election, arguably it's a bit easier, right, on the federal side. Provincial side, maybe not.
Yes, what I would like, because it is a major project, I would like that we do receive direction from council that we will work with Stantec and our partners to identify and proactively reduce those costs, and that they are reported back to council on a regular basis as to what the progress is. I just want to have all the paperwork in order for that, that's all.
So I have a resolution that is moved by Councillor Casey Owens, seconded by Councillor Stacey White, that the Finance Committee recommends to Council that staff proactively work with Stantec to manage the Swastika wastewater project to ensure it remains on budget and accomplishes the scope of work as established in the original project documentation.
All in favor? Passed. Yeah, thank you. Nancy Loach.
As we proceed into the budget process, because of the timelines, there are projects that come forward that jump to the front of the queue simply because they've occurred. Nancy has the first of these. There's one other one, and then one just to advise council on progress.
So the capital project I'm talking to you about today is bed replacement, including one bariatric bed. So I'm asking that council approve the replacement of 3 beds, including one bariatric bed, at the cost of $6,855.50. This project is totally funded through our falls prevention funding, so it's not going to cost the taxpayers anything. Our home is now going on 15 years old. The Carroll beds that were purchased at the time that we moved in are outdated. They are breaking down, so we're in a process of replacing all these beds. They don't meet the bed entrapment protocols. We've done adjustments to them to modify them, but they need to go. So it is a phased-in project, and the need to service residents has caused us to expedite this process. We need to get the beds in-house as soon as possible.
We have a motion? Oh, go ahead.
Nancy, have we sent out a tender or RFP for pricing, and that's what came back?
Yes.
Okay, thank you.
It's moved by Councillor Stacey White, seconded, sorry.
Oh, Patrick?
How many more beds then are needed to be changed, and what would we be doing to get those changed? Like, what's the finances for that
Well,
over a phased
thanks
period?
to the falls prevention funding, which is new funding, started late last year. Replacement of beds is in that. It's $8,100 we get a year. We're not going to spend all of it on beds because we do need to have other things that help prevent falls with residents. Unless the ministry comes out with any one-time funding, they used to do that, but we haven't had any in several years. It'll be a slow process through the falls prevention funding. So right now, I believe we have 36 still Carroll beds, so it'll take several years to replace them all.
And how much longer do we have till, because it's outdated beds that no longer meet bed entrapment protocols, so how long until that becomes enforced?
Well, it's enforced already, so we did have to make modifications to our side rails. That's the part that didn't pass bed entrapment, so we had to add spacers into the side rails, so we are in compliance with that. But the beds you can't get parts for them. They're starting to break down, so there's many reasons why we need to replace them.
Other questions? Now we have a motion.
It's moved by Councillor Stacey White, seconded by Councillor Casey Owens, that the Finance Committee recommends to Council that the capital project to replace beds at Tech Pioneer residents at a cost of $6,855.50 be approved prior to setting the 2019 budget.
All in favor? Unanimous. Ashley Bilodeau.
Okay, so in about mid-February, we ran into some issues with the airport Freightliner. The vehicle is 1998, so it's 21 years old. It ceased operating. Our town mechanics did look at it, but were unable to diagnose it in-house, so the unit was actually sent to Timmins for diagnostic testing. They did end up recognizing that it was the transmission, and it had to be repaired and rebuilt. So that unit is in Toronto right now. Just to add to the hit, we did get correspondence back from Timmins today specifying that the transmission came back, everything looked fine, they took it for a ride. Turns out that it broke down again. The issue seemed to be with the injection pump. So There's another, on top of the $15,000 request for the transmission, there's another $8,040 request for the injection pump. So in terms of replacing this vehicle, because it was something that we looked at previously, you're looking at a cost of about $165,000. Right now, what we're doing is we're using the front end loader, which is also a 1998 piece of equipment. It's not really efficient to be using the front end loader to do all of our plowing. It takes about 3 to 4 times as long in order to get it done. So during winter storms or heavy snowfall events, it becomes a problem. So at this point, we figured the best way to proceed was to go ahead and get that transmission rebuilt, and the recommendation would be to proceed with the $8,000 and the pump and labor that was requested today.
Questions? Patrick?
Yeah, so 15 plus another 8, 23, you said it costs 40,000 to replace the unit?
No, 165,000.
165,000, okay.
Yeah.
But like, is there a plan in place to eventually replace this? Like, put money aside each budget then? Because like, we're just gonna have things going wrong with a Frankenstein piece of equipment that parts won't be available for.
Yeah. So we're working on an equipment maintenance plan. That's something that the roads department and us are working at developing. It'll include not just the airport, but it would include all of the public works equipment as well. So we're trying to figure out a good way to do that on a cost-effective method.
And then the cost of shipping, what is the cost of shipping? Isn't there a potential for them to store it instead of shipping back and forth?
I believe the shipping was included in the $15,000. That bill had already come to us. It was $2,000 to get it to and from Timmins. And I believe that was included with the $15,000.
But for the other option, it would be added cost of shipping unit back and forth if we were to have it sent back to the town until 2019.
Yeah, so if we decided not to proceed with the repairs, then yeah, it would have to get sent back to us for $2,000, and then we'd have to send it
Would
there
there be
again for
a
$2,000.
storage potential with them, or?
I didn't ask, but I could certainly look into it if that's something that interests you.
Interesting.
Councillor Owen?
Correct me if I'm wrong, Ashley, but have we not already spent the 15,000 on the
The
transmission?
transmission's been fixed at this point.
So
yes.
we're kind of caught between a rock and a hard spot here because, and I am not being critical that the
Yeah.
work was done without council's approval because it was a necessary piece of equipment. But at this point, we've put 15,000 in. Now we've got hit with another 8,000. You know,
Let's just hope it doesn't get a flat. on
well,
the way here.
I just can't see throwing away that 15,000. I mean, we sort of have to go ahead with that 8,000 and, you know, hope for the best after that. That's the way I feel.
Stacy?
Sorry, I'll just have to explain. So there is no mechanics in Kirkland Lake that can handle this heavy equipment?
It's the diagnostics, so there was no one capable within Kirkland Lake to diagnose what was wrong with the piece of equipment.
Okay, so we're 100% sure that there's nobody like around? I don't know. Yes, sir.
I'll refer to Steve with his.
Okay. Yeah.
Rick, go ahead.
If I remember correctly, did you not put in a request for, in the upcoming budget for diagnostic equipment so we wouldn't be faced with shipping to Timmins every time this happened? Yeah, okay, I just wanted to make sure that my memory was correct because $2,000 in shipping is not an outrageous price because we're talking heavy-duty towing here. But here's a case, provided we got the right diagnostic equipment, where that equipment would start paying for itself right off the top. And I'm sure we're going to be faced with other situations in the future of the same nature.
Other questions? Motion?
It's moved by Counselor Casey Owens, seconded by Counselor Stacy White, that the Finance Committee recommends to Council that the capital expense of $23,000 to repair the airport Freightliner be approved prior to setting the 2019 budget.
In favor? Unanimous? Wilfred Haas.
Back in February, council directed us to proceed with exploring the opportunities for operational strategic review. We released an RFP that concluded in middle March. We had a number of companies that had expressed interest, went back and forth, but only one submitted an actual proposal. The company, it's called Strategy Corps. They're a very large player, a major player in the consulting business in Ontario. They have a fairly extensive list of clientele that they have worked with, both large and small municipalities, some in the north. Now, I'm seeking direction from council. Strategy Corps is a one-stop shop, and they're proposing that they can do both the organizational review as well as the HR component that will come with it in terms of developing the background to implement the recommendations. I'm not comfortable ever coming back to a council and saying I've only got one proposal, let's vote on it. I do like to have other ones, at least that we can have for comparative purposes, but I also am cognizant of the timelines. We have, in my opinion, two options. One is that we negotiate with Strategy Corps. The second option would be that we go back out, but we split the project into two parts. When I did some follow-up calls with the various consultancies that had expressed an interest, some of the comments that they had made were they didn't want to put the effort into a proposal not knowing what the budget was, and we do keep that secret. The project is big and they're not sure that they can attribute the necessary human resources, especially as the bulk of the work would take place over the summer and a considerable distance from their home offices. The timelines, as requested, they found to be short. Some lack northern experience, quite a few mostly, and also others said that it's outside their core business competencies. They tend to have a strength in coordinating strategic planning, or on the HR side, finding a corporation that does both a little bit more challenging. So that is where we are right now. I have arranged a telephone call with Strategy Corps. I would do that as a courtesy anyway, to find out more about them, but I'd like to know what council's opinion is and what their direction is. Do we proceed with one? Do we go back out?
Questions? Patrick?
Yep, so at first I was all for operational review at the start, but then I've started reading many other municipal operational reviews that they get, some done by Strategy Corp. So we look at all the other municipalities and what they got. What you're going to get, we're going to get told that we need KPIs and metrics. We're going to need a community improvement plan, not community, continuous improvement plan, that we need to be able to measure what we put in and implement and have those KPIs. It's going to talk about public-private partnerships that we need to develop for our service delivery. It's going to look at some of the discretionary services that we're providing, like services of conference center that's losing money. They're going to ask us to look at that. I'm pretty more focused on the HR side now at this point because, there's even a lot of municipalities that get told they have to have succession planning, right? So they're going to come back and tell us that we need to do these things, but we have a pretty good idea that we know we need to do these things. So I'm just kind of worrying about the dollar value. So I would like to see more of a HR come back and help our HR department develop the policies and procedures that we need to do and have in place so that we can remain okay. But for the part that you just look at the common themes that every other municipality is being told, I think we have a good idea that we need to do these things, and it just needs to come with that direction.
Rick?
Wilf, what was the original intended budget for this? Did we have one?
No, because we were also trying to find out what they would come back with. Like I said in the report, we did put a number in there, and that was not communicated to anybody. So
Okay.
this is kind of where they're coming through.
Okay, I have some concerns about the price, obviously. That's a lot of money on an optional spend. But on the other hand, I also have some very serious concerns about the organizational problems that we have within the corporation. Many years ago, they did a study and they came back with this idea, well, you'll have directors and then you'll have managers underneath them. And as far as I can see, all they did was develop another level of bureaucracy and end up costing the taxpayers more. Now, you know, we're dispensing of some things. We got rid of the daycare, you know, we have Heritage North. The corporation has changed since then. And I'm not so sure that this director's situation with managers underneath is giving us best value for our money. We also have some key positions that are not filled at the present time. And so you have other people doing other people's jobs, and everybody's doing the best job they can, but it's not a good way to run the corporation. So I'm very concerned about the cost of our current system, and I don't believe our current system is efficient in terms of what it's doing for the ratepayers, what it's doing in terms of service delivery. So I'm not the expert to sit down and tell you, Wilf, well, we got to go with this system and we got to have this, this, and this. I'm sorry, that's outside. I can sit and look and say that system's broken, you know, but I can't tell you how to fix it. And that's where, personally, I think we have a problem. In terms of succession planning, we have an HR department now, and I would think that that would fall, and I could be wrong, but just my personal opinion is that we have an HR department, so that would be part of the responsibilities of the HR department to develop a succession planning within. I don't think we need to go outside to do that. So I think we need help, but I'm not sure we need $95,000 worth of help.
Counselor, if I'm hearing you right, then it's more, from your perspective, it's more on the organization. Let us handle what we get. I would respond to you that I think that's a good idea, because let's go through that to determine what it is we need. We don't have to commit to everything at one point, and that we should be learning as we go through the process as well. So if I understand you correctly, I think I agree with you.
For once you understood.
Only once, sir.
Casey?
If we decide to cancel this RFP and go back to split it up and go back out to tender, are we confident we can get this done in a timely fashion where it's not going to drag on for 2 or 3 years, that we can have it done by the end of 2019 to implement this as quickly as possible?
One of the original goals was to have a plan going forward that could be accommodated in the 2020 budgeting process. I believe that if we go back out, I would think it's about 3 to 4 weeks for to put out an RFP. But if we're only focusing on the organizational component of it, yes, I do believe that we would have a result in place for council's consideration, and that we could begin to implement and plan for in the 2020 budget. The HR component that both councillors have referred to, yes, that is something that we would have to see how does it fit with what our capabilities are, what our needs are, what we could begin to do. And that component, should there have to be some investment in that, would, I think, be more likely to come in the 2020 budget as opposed to 2019. So yes, long story short, I think that you would have your new organization before the end of this year, yes.
Stacy?
So I came in this afternoon, I read through the proposal. Yes, I definitely agree with Councillor Adams. general knowledge, we can pretty well identify issues. We're quite aware of the issues. What interested me with this proposal is, first, they are aware of the KPMG report. They're going to use it to build on. Second, it's an unbiased third-party insight that will be meeting with council first, as new council, administration and frontline staff. And not only that, they will work with us through implementation. So it's not just writing this report and you're on your own. They will actually work with us through that. And I think because we're in transition currently, not only because of new council, but because of staffing issues and the possibility of quite a large number of our town staff being close to retirement, I do believe that it's worth a look to see what this company can offer and aid Kirkland Lake with.
Pat?
Yeah, couple of things. History of consultants' reports, they always seem to come back with the most expensive recommendation, and often only one recommendation. I'd like to see alternatives, and not just one. And council can decide what best fits our needs. And I think secondly, Rick hit on the succession planning. We need a really strong focus in that report on succession planning, in my opinion. I do not feel that one person, the HR, can put that all together. And that's going to be an ongoing succession planning for years to come. We've been kicking that succession planning down the road for 5 or 10 years and nothing has happened. So now we find ourselves in trouble with all the retirements coming up. So I'd like to see a very strong component in that plan as to how to put together the succession planning. And it may recommend additional staffing in HR. I don't think one person can do it all. That's my own opinion.
In response to that, one of the challenges we face as an organization is that, yes, there are job descriptions, but there's also individuals holding multiple roles, responsibilities, functions, in addition and above their job descriptions. So when we're talking about succession planning, it's not necessarily a person in a position. It's what is being accomplished by that position, and in some cases, you're probably looking at splitting that up a little bit, rationalizing it. In other cases, you might be talking about combining it, but your succession planning then wants to address what do you need going forward to satisfy that. That's one of the reasons that we were recommending, from an organizational perspective, what are all these roles, responsibilities, job descriptions, how should they be fitting together, and then addressing that. That's why the HR component would build on top of anything that has been planned out, as opposed to trying to do that first.
They haven't come up with a firm price yet.
They have, sir, but I would not discuss that in an open session because I'm pretty
Okay.
sure they'll be watching this video shortly after we get out of here.
Okay, but there is room for negotiations as to what our needs are that we could.
I think, I don't know
some extent,
until I've
I don't
spoken
know.
to them. Again, I put forward to council that you aren't bound by one. We can have the conversation. If we feel that it may not meet our needs, we'll certainly report back and then take it back out for a proposal again. I'd rather get it right than just jam it through, because we'll be living with this from a council perspective. You have a 4-year perspective, but we have a 20-year one that we have to contend with. And I appreciate that we're supposed to be doing this every 3 to 5 years, yes, but we wouldn't last 3 to 5 years with a turnover rate of 40% within 2, I guess it is. So we do have to plan a little bit longer.
Councillor Owen?
Yeah, well, we don't have an official succession plan. I know in at least 2 departments that it's taking place. And I know that often it's hidden behind the word, that person is that person's backup. And that's why I think that succession planning may not be as big a job as what we envision it, that it could be just a case of finding out what's going out on in each department, what's in place, and that's why I believe it could be done in-house. And I don't know, there's a lot of departments, maybe it's not happening, maybe it is. But I know it is taking place in some departments without, like, officially being recognized as a succession planning plan.
Pat?
Yeah, just to add to that, Rick, not that I disagree with you, but our succession plan over the last number of years, at least since I've been on council, is, well, I'm next in line in seniority, and I should be getting that job. Was there training? Not a hell of a lot. And I think that's where we failed. And we can put our own succession planning. It's not just naming the person, but the positions and what the requirements should be. But an independent review would, I think, give a better buy-in from the staff and council as well. That's my opinion.
Also, I just want to point out our HR manager is here if you want to ask her to the table for comment.
Come on up, Pam. I'm also wondering if maybe we can get somebody from Strategy Corp to maybe talk to council and tell us exactly what they're willing to offer us and how we're, and what components of their plan, even if it's through a teleconference or through at worst, I would think telephone conference, but in person would be even better, but just so we understand what they're willing to offer us and whether that's, I'm not sure if you've already talked to them, Pam, you probably haven't, but it would be nice if we understood really what they're willing to propose to Kirkland Lake as a corporation.
Yeah, I would just caution that if we don't have a deal or anything like that, you're kind of throwing the course here a little bit. But what we could do though is take some of the components and get them to describe it. We can have that conversation and see what they were willing to do. Sorry.
Go ahead.
So with what Strategy Corps proposed was more than just strategic planning. Was more than just succession planning. It talked about optimizing management, streamlining accountabilities, ensure appropriate spans of control. It talked about better aligning like functions throughout departments, defining our core values and beliefs, starting with council and going down the line. It talked about working with staff and council to ensure a buy-in and a commitment to change the way we think as a corporation. So there's a lot more than just that one section that they're proposing in their proposal, and they want to talk to everyone from council all the way down to frontline workers, and I think it might be something viable at this time that we need to do.
Pam, have you got something to add?
I concur with what Councillor White just stated. It's a very in-depth proposal from what I've assessed, and I think the expertise is very strong. And I do think it's time that the organization moves forward with something like that. In my opinion, it needs it. It's a critical juncture right now, and I think all of those elements, especially to be taking an assessment of that at this time, would give us really good guidance moving forward, especially for long term.
Thank you. Rick?
From the way I think you have to do the organizational review first to start with, because if you put a succession plan into place and then all of a sudden a new organization structure comes back, it doesn't make a lot of sense. And just to comment on something Pat said, yes, I'm aware of those situations too, where I'm next in seniority, so I'm getting the job. I'm aware of that, and I'm aware of that happening within the corporation. But I'm also aware of situations where employees close to retirement are training their backups so that when they retire, there'll be a smooth transition. So we have both taking place within the corporation. Anyways, we got to do the organizational first, as far as I can see. It doesn't make sense to do it the other way around.
That is the process. Yeah,
Pat?
everybody has agreed.
Yeah, Eugene, I like what you mentioned, and I think, like for this company to come up here into an open council meeting and give away their trade secrets it's a little unfair. But seeing that we're looking at as a contract, with these people, could that not take place in an in-camera session? I guess I'm asking Joanne.
My understanding is that they wanted to meet with council one-on-one, and then, yes, it would be a training session to figure out what it is council's working.
Well, before we get into the training sessions, I'm still saying, what are they really offering us?
Their proprietary stuff is things that they can talk about in a closed meeting, yes.
So
Yes.
I
I
think
would
the mayor
recommend
is
that.
asking though,
We're gonna spend $90,000.
can we,
Oh.
yeah, he wants to have a meeting with them before there's any contract or
Before
anything.
you have a contract with them?
Yeah.
I don't know if they'd be willing to do that. There would definitely be another cost involved in that, my
yeah.
understanding is. And,
Well, I think the fact that it's not in a public session, they're not giving away their trade secrets, proprietary,
But sir,
information.
could
that-
I ask-
That it could still be done.
perhaps it'd be better to consider first, do you want to go with them or do you want to go back out before going to that route? Because once you have gone down that route, then it's an unfair advantage to anybody else, should you decide that. So
I agree.
just mentioning that.
I agree.
Go ahead, Rick.
Like I say, the price, the ballpark figure that's on our information here, 95,000, scares the hell out of me to spend that money on a sort of something we don't have to do. But having said that, we have to do something. And if this is the only corporation that can provide us with what we need, I would be in favor of going ahead with the organizational review part of it. And then, when we have our ducks in a row on the organization, then we can consider our options for the second part of the study.
Human resource.
Again, I can also say though, if you wish, we can go make that known to Strategy Corps, release a second RFP just for organization. That is also an option that will bring the costs down considerably, obviously, and create more opportunity over competition for the position. So just putting that out there.
Because what I'm seeing now is a lot of people in the corporation doing more than one job. And I'm seeing on their faces, not from what they're telling me, but I'm seeing on their faces burnout, okay? And I know there's too many employees in this corporation that are working far too many hours, and I don't like that. It's something that I think we need to address before we have a major accident, or we have somebody on long-term sick leave because they've been worked into the ground. That's my big concern. So I think we have to go ahead somehow with the organizational, because the staff need it, the corporation needs it, the taxpayers need it, because they're not getting efficient in my opinion, efficient spending of tax dollars right now.
Pam, I'd like to hear your opinion.
Thank you. I think succession planning is a part of it, but in my opinion, there are so many elements to the organizational review that needs attention to allow the corporation to move forward efficiently, and to have long-term success. Right now, the corporation is struggling a on a number of different levels. I'm not gonna go into detail about what they are, but it is a critical time right now to steer this corporation in the right direction. And we do not have the human resources to implement that on our own. We don't have the expertise to guide us in that direction, and that's the reason for going out for the RFP. We appreciate that we had the approval to move forward, and we do need to make a decision about, you collectively have to make a decision to direct us to move in the right direction, whether it be renegotiating with Strategy Corps or moving forward with a different RFP.
Stacy?
Perhaps could we defer this decision this evening until each council member had the opportunity to read their proposal? Perhaps if each council member got to read the proposal, they'd have a better understanding of the scope and the plans of this company.
Yeah.
Casey?
I've read the proposal. Yeah, like I don't have an issue moving. I don't think if we deferred more, I think it's just prolonging the agony or the situation. I think we need to move on this as quickly as possible to make sure that, to show our staff or employees that we are taking this seriously and that we do want change for the better, to make sure we don't run this organization into the ground.
Patrick?
Yep, the proposal's been out for a while. I even quoted it in my notice of motion, so it's been read. So I'm still open to reissue the RFP for taxpayers' sakes. I would have more competition, bring it down. You can look at your both options. Might delay it a little bit longer, but you'd have more competition on the price.
If that is the case, let's split it in two, or go for one single package again. I think you'll get much more success getting, if it's split in two, if you have to do that second time. Pam, you are giving me what your opinion on it.
Pam, I want your opinion.
My opinion, I'm disappointed we only had the one proposal. I do have to say I was pleasantly surprised with the scope of expertise that this company offers and the reference points that they provided in terms of similar restructuring and training and expertise that they have in the north as well as in other areas, particularly in the municipal sector. I'm concerned about a delay if we go back out to different RFP process, and I'm also concerned about a disconnect or a possible disconnect. I don't know if that would happen.
I feel like that too. I feel the same
In
way.
terms of one organization doing the reorg and another one doing the implementation. I don't know whether that'll be an issue at all, but that's just my concern.
I have the same concern. Go ahead, Pat.
Wilf, you thought splitting it might be cheaper. I don't think that'll be the case.
I want to clarify, it's cheaper on an RFP. I don't know that the total price, if you do both components, would be any different. I'm just saying the first one.
Yeah, because that's why, as Eugene was saying about having them do a presentation to council, we would be able to get a breakdown from them. This is the cost for the reorganization, the succession planning piece to it. Then I think we'd be able to make an informed decision. I don't think we should be delaying. I don't like the idea of, just like Pam said, having possibly two different consulting firms doing different portions of it.
And then trying to implement both is a concern.
Well, we do have a meeting or a teleconference set up with them. Would that be something that we could move to a formal meeting and invite councilors to participate?
Definitely, for sure, we could do that. If
Yeah,
they're-
I will confirm with them if they're willing. I'd definitely let you know ahead of time. I would tell them that it is part of a interview process, that a decision has not been made. Just to be clear, because I don't want to set us up that we're making a decision and making a promise that we don't intend to keep or so.
Is that okay?
Right now it's Thursday at
Concerns?
12 o'clock, I think, eh? Yeah, 12:15. Thursday at 12:15.
So my understanding is there's no recommendation concerning this yet. We're going to hold off and wait till after this telephone call.
That's my understanding from the nods at the table.
Okay.
Done? Thank you, Pam. You have a motion for adjournment?
So it's moved by Councillor Stacy White, seconded by Councillor Casey Owens, that the committee adjourn its finance meeting to a regular meeting of council. All in favor, sir?
All in favor? Unanimous.
Did you want to take a 5-minute break or do you, yeah? Okay, so we'll take a 5-minute break and we'll be back.
Well, it's only 3 minutes.
Yeah.
Welcome to the council meeting of April the 2nd, 2019. One notice, at its meeting on April the 16th, 2019, council will consider a bylaw to set the 2019-2020 complex fees. Moment of silence. Approval of the agenda.
It's moved by Councillor Casey Owens, seconded by Councillor Stacy White. The council approves the agenda for its regular meeting of April 2nd, 2019 as presented.
All in favor? Passed. Any declaration of pecuniary interest? None declared. Petitions and delegations? None noted. Acceptance of the minutes and recommendations?
It's moved by Councillor Casey Owens, seconded by Councillor Rick Owen. The council accepts the minutes of the following meetings. The Kirkland Lake Centennial Library Board held February 21st, 2019. The Northern College Campus Committee held January 21st, 2019. The Museum Advisory Committee held February 20th, 2019. The meeting to open proposals for strategic operational review held March 15th, 2019. The regular meeting of council held March 19th, 2019, and the departmental budget finance meetings held March 20th, 26th, 27th, and 28th, 2019.
All in favor? Passed. Reports of municipal officers and communications, CAO.
I'm bringing forward the recommendations that were made at the Finance Committee just now regarding the request for the TPR beds, the airport Freightliner transmission, and strategic operating review. The recommendations were, as to my recollection, TPR beds to approve and proceed with the purchase, airport Freightliner transmission to proceed with the repairs, and with the Strat-Op review to see if we can arrange a meeting or at least an interview between the councillors and Strategy Corps.
I have the resolution, and there's one more. So it's moved by Councillor Rick Owen, seconded by Councillor Casey Owens. They gave those, the two that were passed. They replaced the beds at Tech Pioneer Residence and the capital expense of $23,000 for the Freightliner, but also to have staff work proactively with Stantec in the Swastika wastewater project.
David? Approved?
The next item refers to the concession stand that is at the complex. The term for the concession is up. We were looking at this. The person who has a concession is interested in continuing. We're asking if council is interested in that. Some of the reasons being that you are going through a reorganization. Perhaps that's not going to be handled the same way. I don't know. It's something for consideration. As well, it does give the opportunity for the Recreation Committee to give its input in that as well. You're already halfway through 2019, so extending it for a year, well, effectively, it's not quite that long. You'll be in 2020. You'll have your decisions made before that. So, council, if you can give us direction on that. The next one is an NOHFC resolution. The resolution is, it pertains to the expansion of municipal projects that are related to Kirkland Lake Gold's major expansion. We do have some funding for this project already in the works, and one of the funding agencies that we are still dealing with would like to know if they do not participate and so we do not achieve 90% funding, would the municipality still be going forward with the project? I have told them that that is something that council will be discussing as part of its budget deliberations, but they do need, as part of an ongoing application process, a resolution indicating that the money has been received from the one and that council is considering this.
It's moved by Councillor Rick Owen, seconded by Councillor Casey Owens. The council authorizes the Director of Economic Development and Tourism to submit an application for funding to the Northern Ontario Heritage Fund Corporation in support of expansion of municipal services adjacent to the industrial park. Total project costs are to a maximum of $2,339,514.25. Possible funding from NOHFC totals $1,052,781.41, and the municipal contribution would be $2,333,951.43. It is the intent of the municipality to proceed with the expansion of municipal services project in the absence of funding from NOHFC.
Any discussion? All in favor? Passed.
The next issue deals with the complex user fees. Normally they take effect in July. When this was brought forward previously, council asked that it be deferred and brought back in time that if a decision had to be made for the implementation in July, it could be done. What the complex is finding now is that the different user groups are meeting and they are looking at what the fees will be. They do need some guidance. We're bringing it back to council as a result for direction. Do you, again, your 2019 fees are coming up very quickly, their timeline, or what would council like to do?
I have a resolution that's moved by Councillor Casey Owens, seconded by Councillor Rick Owen. The council directs the acting chief administrative officer to bring back a bylaw approving the 2019-2020 complex user fees as presented.
All in favor? Passed.
The next item deals with the new aquatic center. As part of the warranty process, they will be draining the pool and following the instructions from the, I can't say it, I think it's Myrta, I can't say the word, but the pool manufacturer. It is work that was anticipated. The report does indicate what the implications for the consequences for the municipality are.
Councillor Owens?
Yeah, I have some questions concerning this. Is this problems related to it not being installed properly, or is this
Sorry.
routine? And Were there discussions with the major renter, the Stingrays, to find out what kind of impact this would have on their, I know it says it's gonna cut in their training time, but they seem to be in the peak of their season. And I'm thinking if it was the ice surface and the team was heading to the playoffs, we wouldn't be taking the ice out from underneath them. And so I think it's important. It doesn't indicate what discussions took place there.
Chad, if you want to join us at the table, I'm not sure if you can address that. My understanding is that yes, that was discussed. The issue would be that the pool itself, it's coming to the end of its installation warranty period. Chad, correct me if I'm wrong. And that this is scheduled maintenance for that. All the user groups and all the, well, user groups, the swim club, as well as other users were advised in advance. Chad, if you can comment.
Discussions with the Stingrays, and there might be 4 people affected that are going on, like, doing different things, but that's kind of that's not their peak time of the year either. So it's kind of, there was discussions, they wanted maybe to go a little bit later, but from my understanding, it would only affect maybe 4 swimmers. And as you can see, the numbers that, you know, it would be $724.42, lost revenue from them.
Councillor Owens?
Well, that's good to hear, Chad, because I just wanted to confirm that proper discussions had taken place. That's important to me as a counselor. And I understand that they need to coordinate different trades and whatever that have to come in to do the work. And that's difficult to do. So as long as the proper discussions took place, I'm happy with that.
Yes, the coordination is better at that time because it's kind of before the peak construction season, so it kind of fits in and we can organize everybody in at that time. Then there's more going on than just the draining of the pool. There's, you know, repairing of some tiles, different, everything that would need to be repaired or warranty items would be done at that time. So there'll be numerous trades in the building.
Okay, so it's a whole sort of project, final inspection, final repair of deficiencies. But I'm still confused about the draining of the pool, because I thought this was like the super pool, you know, like the way it was talked about before it was put in there, that we'd never have a problem with it and it'd be the most wonderful thing. And so I'd like some more information on why they're draining it, to do what to it, and is this going to be an ongoing thing that we're faced with? We don't have popping tiles anymore, but if we have to drain the pool every 3 years, that's not particularly good.
To be fair, Superman washes his tights every so often too. This is part of the same process to look after it. I'm not sure that it would be set out in the schedule from the manufacturer as to what regular maintenance is.
Yes, it is. And I could get you an exact number for that. I can't say for sure right off the top of my head, but it is required every so many years for cleaning purposes and whatnot. And the reason why there isn't a problem with the pool right now. It's just it's recommended that we drain it, and they do, like we would obviously do a good cleaning on it. Well, we did that, and at that time they will do a thorough inspection because of if there is something noticed while we're still under warranty, and we could push the issue.
It's both the contractor and the pool manufacturer involved in this, or just the contractor?
No, the pool manufacturer. There will be a Murtha rep on site at the time.
So it's our last chance for minor deficiencies to get included
Yes, that's
in our
correct.
original
Yes.
costs. Councillor Owens?
This Murtha pool system, does it have a longer warranty than the actual project?
I don't
Like the
understand.
pool separate from the building? Okay, we hired Monteith to build the building, and we bought this special pool. which is made by a different company, is there a manufacturer's warranty on this special pool we bought over and above what Monteith it offers on the building project?
Yes, there is, and the warranty is, it depends on the maintenance that we do. So if we don't follow their maintenance guideline, they could void the warranty on us, and this is why we're doing this at this stage. We're following the procedures.
Go ahead.
But I would like it to come back to an open council meeting, how often the pool has to be drained to be cleaned, just so that in the future we'll know, and the public will know how often it was done. I'm disappointed that, I know it's after the fact, that this information didn't come out at the time the decision was made to go with that type of pool. You know, we were told all the positives, but we weren't told.
I think this would be for any pool. You still have to do your maintenance.
Yeah, you have to do maintenance, but I'm just saying, you know, it would have been nice if this had come out publicly, but prior to, because we spent a lot of extra money for that pool, that particular design, so.
Chad, would you be able to pull out what the required maintenance schedule for the pool is and identify if it's by time or by hours of use, anything like that? Does that contradict anything you have with the pool manufacturer? I don't believe so.
No, not at
No.
all, absolutely, I can
Right.
get that information to anybody who would like it,
If you could, and we'll pass it on to council then.
sure.
Thank you.
I have a resolution that's moved by Councillor Casey Owens, seconded by Councillor Rick Owen. The council directs the acting chief administrative officer to proceed with the planned pool closure for maintenance, warranty work, inspections, and efficiencies.
All in favor? Okay. Thanks, Chad.
The next item, I think is taking as long to write as the Bible did, but this is the terms of reference. There were two corrections that, or changes that Councillor Owen wished to see. They have been inserted, and I don't believe there was anything else from that. Okay.
Councillor White? No?
No,
No.
it's good.
The
You're okay, Rick?
Well,
I hate to ask.
don't ask me if I'm okay, that's a matter of opinion, but yes, I'm happy with the terms of reference.
Okay.
Resolution. It's moved by Councillor Casey Owens, seconded by Councillor Rick Owen. The council approves the Parks and Recreation terms of reference as presented.
All in favor? Passed. Gold Miners Hockey request.
Previously, we had a representation from the Gold Miner hockey team. They were making requests that were related to their continuation in Kirkland Lake and what their business model would be. The items were the extension of the Arena Board advertising agreement. It's essentially a clarification of terms. They maintain the current ice rates. To be clear, they accept that ice rates would go up a percentage every year, but their base amount would still be the same. I'm not saying that correctly. Their base amount would accommodate the percentage increase, but it would still, yes, I had a much clearer explanation in my head before. And to evaluate the dressing fee agreement, dressing room fee agreement for the junior, what the money has been that they have put into it and how that applies. The items were, I think, far better described by Mr. Cox when he was here, but it was brought forward that we would be revisiting this as we get to the end of March. The gold miners, one of the questions that raised was, do the gold miners owe the municipality any money? Yes, they owe about $12,000. That is due at the end of May. It was not due at the end of March as we first indicated. So bringing it forward to council for its options and discussions. Do you choose to approve the request, defer a decision pending more information, or deny the request?
Just one comment. I did take the opportunity to phone Steve Cox to determine if they are in the financial position to meet that commitment. I think it's May 31st. He said yes, they are, and that's their full intentions. The reason for the urgency in getting some commitment from the municipality now is that they have to send in their registration fee to the league. So they wanted some confirmation in place before they spent that money. Councillor Owens?
Yeah, I'm in favor of extending the agreements we have one more year. I thought the dressing room agreement was already in place for one more year, but I could be wrong there. I'm not in favor of extending it indefinitely. I think that they need to be working towards sustainability. I also appreciate how much it costs to run the team, and that they can't do that overnight, and that it takes time. But I will make my support conditional on them paying back the $12,000 on time, which I have every reason, from what I've heard and from what Steve said at council, to believe that they will pay it back on time. So as long as they pay it back, I'm in favor of extending the current agreements for one more year, but also passing on the message, and I believe they're doing this anyways, that they must be working to become more financially sustainable amongst themselves. It's a great thing, you know, to have a junior A team in town. I know it's a point of pride. I know I only went to 2 games this year. I had planned on going to more, but I also listened every day on the radio to find out how they had done the night before. So that's, I think I hope council will agree to extend it one more year.
Just before we go to Councillor White, Wolf, could you clarify, were they looking, I thought they were looking for a 3-year agreement? Or am I dreaming?
I do recall that discussion, but I don't see it. And I think that when they were at council, they said that their goal was to achieve their sustainability. So I don't want to comment whether they were looking for a 3-year or not. I don't believe so.
I'm not positive on that either, and I didn't discuss that with Steve today. Councillor White.
So I just want to echo Councillor Owen, Councillor Rick's sentiments on this. We definitely do appreciate having this team within Kirkland Lake. However, even the Canadian Women's Hockey League at some point had to decide recently that their business was no longer viable. I would like to see this club move towards sustainability without depending so much on the taxpayers to subsidize their business. So, like Rick said, one more year, we're willing to do this, but hopefully within the next season, they're able to stand on their own.
I agree. I think it should be on that condition, as Rick mentioned, that $12,000 is paid on the due date. Any other comments from councillors or concerns? Is there a motion? Okay.
Do you want in the motion about the payback?
I think that should be included, yes.
Okay, so I have a motion that's moved by Councillor Casey Owens, seconded by Councillor Rick Owen. The council approves the request from the Kirkland Lake Gold Miner hockey team for 1-year support, conditional that the amount owing is paid to the town by May 31st, 2019.
Just to clarify that, we didn't touch on it, but it does include the advertising rates as well. Okay. All in favor? Passed. Enforcements?
Yeah,
Bylaw?
the final item for my part of the agenda. Bylaw enforcement in the town of Kirkland Lake has been obviously in place for a long time, but when we were going out to bring in somebody new, realized that there's no policy governing how the process does actually function. So we did some research on other best practices from different municipalities, put together this policy for council's consideration. I'd like to have it in place to guide any agreements that we do. And there will be, I'm sure, amendments as we go forward and find what works, what doesn't work. But I think it's better that we do have a framework for operations.
Councillor Owens?
Yeah, I read the policy. I don't have any problems with it. I was just wondering, Wilf, was this based on policies from other municipalities, or was it based on legal opinion or combination, or did it all come out of your very smart head?
Some things did trickle out. You can see where the marks were, but no, I did contact quite a few municipalities and tried to pull out what actually worked in their policies and what they had changed. Pam and Ashley, Joanne all took a hand in reviewing it to make sure that it suited our circumstances as well.
Wilf, I have a question. Does the bylaw enforcement policy include anything to do with property standards?
We kept the applicable bylaws out of the policy itself, because whatever council decides should be enforced would be covered by the policy as a matter of behavior for the enforcement and for administration. So if council decided tomorrow that, well, exactly, then, okay, we'll be going that. Or conversely, that, pet pigs are off limits, well, the bylaws still covers that. The bylaws about the behavior and how the process is conducted, not the individual bylaws.
Could you give us just a very brief comment on the process of getting somebody in place?
Yes, by April 16.
Okay,
That was brief.
that was brief.
That was brief.
Okay, so it's moved by Councillor Rick Owens, seconded,
Oh.
sorry.
Sorry. Patrick, sorry.
Yep, I'm certainly in favor of the policy. I would just like to have it put in that within a 1-year period, we'll bring this policy back to be reviewed so we can measure its success in that key moment.
And actually, is that possible, like for all policies that we, when we're bringing them forward, we do set in a mandated review time? Because we're already working on that,
We are
so.
working on them, so anything that we're bringing forward to now, it should have in there that it will be reviewed, usually by one term of council, like within the term of council, generally.
Yep,
within
but
that.
just
this
certainly
is
because it's a
one.
new policy,
Yes.
right? That we should have that measure of 1 year.
Because we're certainly finding that with all the other policies that we have too, we want them brought back to be reviewed.
I have to agree, Patrick, because it's a very hot topic these days, especially on social media. So I would like to see it reviewed in a year or two, in this case. Not in year two, but in a year.
So it's moved by Councillor Rick Owens, seconded by Councillor Casey Owens. The council approves the bylaw enforcement policy as presented by the acting chief administrative officer, and that it be brought back to council for review within the next year.
All in favor? Passed. Joanne, you're up.
This is a request that comes in every year from the Holy Name Parish. Every year they do their Easter Way of the Walk, and so they're coming forward to council asking permission to have a parade permit. It's done by parade, that they do this walk. One of the other things I would just like to mention is that they also did send a letter around. They're asking for people to stop and do readings at every one of their stops. And so if any counselor is interested in doing that, if you could let us know, we'll make the arrangements. So I have a motion that's moved by Councillor Rick Owen, seconded by Councillor Casey Owens. The council approves the request from Holy Name Parish for a parade permit to hold the Way of the Cross on Friday, April the 19th, beginning at 11 a.m. at Holy Name Church and finishing at 1 p.m. at the Assumption Church.
All in favor? Passed. Especially if you're on the cross. Hold that thought. Ashley, you've changed. Richard. I like the old Ashley.
She changed a bit, eh?
Sorry, Rick.
I'm sorry. Didn't work out for me. Afternoon, everybody. I'm here today to talk about spring cleanup. And that council declare May 6th and May 19th as spring cleanup weeks 2019 in the town of Kirkland Lake, and establish dates for the spring free tipping fee event from May 6th to May 19th, including 2 Sundays, which are half days. And that council approve a local waste drop-off point of physical services on Dunfield Road for waste electronics. The budget implications, well, there is a reduction in tipping fee revenue during the event. And we do make small revenues with the waste electronics. Now, the intent is to promote good maintenance standards throughout town. The spring waste event provides residents an opportunity for spring cleaning of their properties, households, without the additional cost to dispose of the waste up to 2 cubic meters, which is the equivalent of a half-ton truckload. We do request that they prove that they are indeed residents of the town of Kirkland Lake. And again, the local waste electronics drop-off point gives them a place in town as opposed to just a landfill where they can bring their old stereo equipment, computers, vacuum cleaners, microwaves and the like. But due to the associated costs for Freon gas removal, all Freon containing appliances such as air conditioners and refrigerators, freezers are exempt from the program. And they're subject to the tipping fees that apply to them. Now, in the past, council has provided residents with opportunities to clean up their properties by offering various services such as bulky curbside collection. That's what happened when people would put their trash on the side of the road and the works department would come along and pick it up. Free landfill tipping fees, electronics roundups, and hazardous waste collection events. The last bulky curbside collection occurred in 2015. The intention was to excuse me. The intention was to host the curbside collections biannually. However, due to significant costs, approximately $60,000, now that's in 2015 dollars. It has been suspended and replaced with 2 weeks of free tipping at the landfill site, both spring and fall of 2016, 17, and 18. Any questions?
Councillor White?
So when the removal of spring cleanup came to council, it was stated that it would happen biannual. Has there been any savings towards this goal of bringing back spring cleanup week for those in the municipality that have neither the vehicle nor the monetary means of paying somebody to do it? Is there any savings put aside to bring this back?
Not to my knowledge. I did some extensive research into past practices, and it was typically a budgeted amount in the waste management budget. It was included in that. It wasn't a capital expense.
Councillor Owens?
Yeah, I know I've been approached by several residents about having the, what do we call that? The bulky curbside pickup? And I'd love to do it again, but with town's current finances, I don't see that's, could even be considered because of the cost. But I don't think it's something, you know, I think it's something we should keep on the back burners and try and figure out a way of doing it, because there are a lot of residents, a lot of seniors that don't have trucks, or, you know, and there's a lot of people that have things they want to get rid of, and like has been said, they don't have the financial means or the truck to get it out there. And so some I think I would recommend that we somehow find a compromise that could be affordable within our budget and meet the needs. I don't know what that is, but you're very creative. I'm sure you'll come up with something, Rick.
Eugene?
I know that we had talked about having dumpsters set up at the parking lot behind the Kresge's, but again, there's a cost involved, and the babysitting that would require to keep that area clean would be absurd, because as we saw from the last experience, it became a dump site rather than a collection site for garbage. Everybody's couch, TV, and bed, mattress ended up being there. So I think this is probably in our budget for 2019, and maybe in a year or two, if we can get things organized better, we can look at this again as either the bulk or having somebody babysit a bunch of dumpsters down at the parking lot.
Patrick?
Yep, echoing Stacy and Rick, certainly there's a lot of people that do need it, and it was good for them. I think it could be possible to look at to pay per use of that service, right? So if you are interested in having it on the side, you'd have to pay a little bit extra to have that service provided. When it was happening in the community, it was enjoyable to see all the piles. You'd do some garbage hunting. There would be a lot of trucks, people taking stuff away to refurbish and get it out, rather than just all going to the dump. It was that opportunity to not have everything go to the garbage. So one person's trash is another person's treasure. But certainly a pay per use could be looked into for the next year, but certainly not 60,000 for this year.
Councillor White?
Another solution too, other municipalities do like a treasure something day, where they allow people in the municipalities for one day during daylight hours to put out their usable refuse. And yeah, it is a program. I can look it up. Sorry.
Yeah, yes, there are some that have these programs in place where they can put a table set out there and say it's free and come get me, but you gotta have it off within, 24 hours, 48 hours. Others are doing specially, they call it special event days. The larger centers mostly, they'll have a period between May and September where they have select days throughout select months where they say, okay, you can put out a fridge and call the works department. It's per call. They don't drive around these large centers, and they'll come pick it up on that specific day. Things like that, they do have those. Smaller communities like us, traditionally they've had the curbside as well, and they've went with Amnesty like we are now.
Casey?
Just a bit to respond to Councillor White's proposition on that one, how do you enforce to get the garbage off the street at the end of the day? Like, I remember last year there's a couch that magically appeared across the street from me next to the fire hydrant, and it stayed there until either, I'm not sure if physical services picked it up or or if it's even still in the snowbank, but how do you enforce it? Like, stuff appears out of nowhere on a lot of streets, so it's might not necessarily work.
Yep, that was certainly a good idea from Stacy, and certainly if that were to be done, that policy would have to be looked at to at that point. So certainly that can be looked at further if needed, but certainly a great idea.
Councillor Owens?
The city of Aurelia, does that, put out reusable stuff, on a regular basis. And they have a bylaw in place that says it can only be out during certain times. I don't know whether it's every Friday during the summer month, or every Saturday during the summer months, or whether it's once a month or whatever. And I know this for a fact, because I've driven around and looked for things that I wanted for the property we had down there. And I also have never seen stuff left out beyond what was required. And I think a big portion of having some sort of program like this is to stop couches from showing up beside fire hydrants, right? Because people got a couch, they can't put it in their garbage cart, and so they just magically appear. I've noticed a number of mattresses seem to magically appear on vacant lots. And I think the idea of this program is to reduce that kind of thing. And I don't know what the punishment is in the city of Aurelia. I assume they have a punishment, but they seem to be able to manage it.
It's moved by Councillor Casey Owens, seconded by Councillor Rick Owen. The town council declares May 6th to May 19th as spring cleanup week in and for the town of Kirkland Lake, and that free residential tipping fees at the Kirkland Lake landfill site be from May 6th to May 19th, 2019, and that council approves the local waste electronic drop-off point at Physical Services on Dunfield Road.
All in favor? Passed.
Thank you.
Thanks, Rick. Introduction, reading, and consideration of bylaws.
It's moved by Councillor Rick Owen, seconded by Councillor Casey Owens, that bylaw 19-038, being a bylaw to authorize a one-year extension of concession services at the Joe Mavernack Community Complex to Polly James, be read a first, second, and third time, enacted and passed.
All in favor? Passed.
Okay, the next bylaw we're going to defer because we will have council come to the.
Yep.
come to
Were there any questions sent to you by council? None to report. Any notice of motions? None declared. Confirmation bylaw.
It's moved by Councillor Stacy White, seconded by Councillor Casey Owens, that bylaw 19-040, being a bylaw to confirm the proceedings of council at its meeting held April 2nd, 2019, be read a first, second, and third time, enacted and passed.
All in favor? Passed. Councilors' reports? Nothing to report. Adjournment?
It's moved by Councillor Rick Owen, seconded by Councillor Casey Owens, that council adjourns its regular meeting of April 2nd, 2019 to an in-camera meeting pursuant to section 239(2) of the Municipal Act to discuss two issues concerning identifiable persons.
All in favor? Passed.